Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, where we will introduce the new edition of the Oxford University Summer School Program. I'm Demir Pakel. I'm a faculty member in the Economics department at Oxford, and I'm also the academic director of our summer school program. So before I start, let me give you a quick information about the plan for today. So I'll start with introducing the summer school program, what and how and who it is for. And I'll also list the courses and give a brief information about logistics. And then each of our professors who will be teaching in the upcoming summer school will give a short brief or a brief description of the courses that they will be teaching. And then we will move to participants' experience, and one of our alumni will tell you about his experience from last year. And then we will close with a Q&A session. So for the Q&A, we ask you to use the Q&A box that you will see in the bottom of the screen. So obviously you can ask questions about course content, which will be answered by our professors, but you may also want to ask questions about logistics. Okay. So what are we trying to do in this program is, so first of all, the audience that we're speaking to is quite wide. So far we have had participants obviously from graduate schools, so graduate students, also early career researchers and economists working in public institutions like central banks, international organizations, or industry. So this is the audience that we are speaking to, and what we are trying to do is provide. So first of all, our summer school program is not offering some general core graduate courses like core macroeconomics, core microeconomics, and so on. Instead, what we are trying to do is the program is aiming participants to keep them up to date and at the forefront of specific subfields of economics. So treatment effects, production function estimation, behavioral macro, advanced international finance, monetary economics, you name it. But instead of giving some like general graduate level content on macro, micro, and econometrics, what we are trying to do is to go deeper and focus on certain topics and subfields of economics. So the course is so each course that we'll be offering is going to combine theory and practice in a useful way. So theory is theory in every course, but what we mean by practice is going to depend on the course itself. So obviously, for applied courses, doing practice simply means some like hands-on training and applying the methods learned in the lectures and in the theory part to real data. And doing some coding, etc. But in some other courses, it will be looking at real-world examples and policies and trying to interpret them through the lens of the theoretical models covered in lectures. So the practice will depend on actually the context. So far we have been lucky to receive very positive feedback from participants. Having said that, we are always taking the feedback quite seriously and by heart, and we're making changes, modifications here and there to be able to maximize the participants' experience and benefit from the program. So later, as I said in the beginning, later you'll be able to hear experience from one of our alumni who attended the course last year. So the dates for this year is going to be from 8 to 12 September. So it's going to be in person, but in case you're not able to make it in person, so we will also be doing live, so through Zoom. So we can say it's a mix of online and in person, but the actual lectures are going to be taking place in Oxford. Okay, so here is the list of courses that we are offering this year. So we are asking, so you probably saw it in the email. So we are asking each participant to choose a morning course and an afternoon course. So among morning courses, so we have monetary economics, treatment effects, behavioral macro, and production function and markup estimation course. And in the afternoon, we have advanced international finance, machine learning, economics of digital economy, and solution methods for macroeconomic models. So depending on your interests and current research, you can do a mix of, you can decide on the mix of courses that you would like to take. So after my introduction, every professor will give you a short description of the course that they will be offering. So here is what the schedule will look like. So each course will be a mix of lectures and tutorials. So tutorial is the Oxford way of saying problem set sessions or recitations. In the mornings and afternoons, we have, if you're taking a morning lecture, so the tutorial of that particular one will be in the afternoon and so on. So it will be, so we will make the schedule to make sure that nobody has any conflicts. This summer school program is a great opportunity to have advanced training in certain topics and in economics. So so all the topics are quite hot and active areas of research, but it also gives the participants opportunity of networking, which you like it or not is an important part of our work. So what we will be trying to do is also to do small workshops within each course, which will give participants the opportunity to present their own research. So please take this as interpret this as an opportunity rather than a requirement. So we are not expecting every participant to present their own work, but in case you do, then there will be an opportunity for you to present your work and receive some feedback from our professors who are leading academics in their own fields. And of course, networking doesn't only involve interacting with the professors, but also other participants. So we're looking forward to the days where we will see work jointly done by our alumni, actually. Okay, so the lectures and tutorials will take place in the economics department, which is located in the Manor Road building. I know it doesn't look like a typical Oxford-style building, but believe me, it's quite convenient when it comes to lectures and tutorials. But we have also planned for you some social events where you will get you will have some Oxford style experience as well. So there are two highlights on the schedule. So one of them is a formal dinner at one of the Oxford colleges. So it's a picture from last year, and there will also be a drinks reception on the first day of the summer school, which is a Monday. Okay, so here's so that's first picture is me. Obviously, I'm not teaching. I'm just the course director, and you will see you will hear most of the professors later in the webinar today when they introduce their courses. Okay. I think I'm done with the introductions. So now what we will do is we will move to the descriptions or presentations of the particular courses, and we will start with the treatment effects one. So unfortunately, Roma couldn't make it today. So instead, I will be introducing the course. I'm not teaching it. Okay, so this course has been taught so far by Frank, but he's not available this year, and we have another amazing professor who will be taking over, is Romu. Okay, I'm doing applied work in my own research. I'm a trade economist, so when it comes to treatment effects, so it's a quite active area in econometrics, as you all know. And probably there's some working paper becoming available as we speak now. So it's extremely active. And I know it's very hard to keep up with the recent advances in this area. So if you're feeling the same way as I do as an empirical economist, then this course is for you, regardless of whether you're a graduate student, early career researcher, or doing or have to interpret some research during your work. So the software that the course will be using in the tutorials will be R. So I think the expectation is to have some like basic understanding of R, but obviously there will be quite intensive training on how to use R during the tutorials. Of course, if you're interested in taking this course, you already have some understanding of what causal inference is, but you want to learn more. Actually, the course has a very well structured and detailed website. So it's this. I'm gonna click on this now and show you the content on the website. Okay, here we go. I hope you're able to see it. So all the course materials actually on the website that is maintained by our faculty friend. So there's some, as you can see, there's some pre-reading and everything, but you can check them for sure. I'll just go over the individual topics. So the course will start with a discussion of partial identification and then move to testing of the local average treatment effect assumptions. So we all know about that, and then marginal treatment effects, and then spillovers, which is quite important and investigated in many fields. So these are the contents of lecture, so you can click on the slides and lecture notes, so you will be able to see all the material there. As I said, each course is a mix of lectures and tutorials. So in the applied session, so in this case, there will be some like hands-on training with data using R. So you will be able to have an opportunity to apply these methods and tests and everything covered in lectures on actual data using R. So you may have obviously questions about the content and everything. I'll try to answer them if you have any during the Q&A session. But otherwise, you can direct your questions to us. We will share it with the professor, who will be able to provide more detailed answers. Okay, I think we're done with the treatment effects, and next one is economics of digital economy, and Greg will present the lecture description, course description, and using his slides. Greg?
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name's Greg Taylor. Along with my Oxford colleague, Alexei Perekonyak, I'm teaching a course on the economics of the digital economy. So I guess everybody knows that the digital economy is one of the most important, dynamic, vibrant sectors of the modern economy. We use their products every day. We're using them right now, so it feels very real and relevant to be thinking about this. And it's also home to some of the biggest policy changes of our day. So people are actively thinking about how do we stimulate more competition in digital markets? What do we need to do to protect people's data and privacy? How should we be regulating emerging challenges associated with artificial intelligence? All very active policy debates. And given this combination of economic importance and policy relevance, the topic has given rise to one of the most active areas of research in the contemporary literature on industrial organization. And that's the focus of this course. And what we'll see is that the digital economy is characterized by a range of interesting and sometimes puzzling phenomena. For example, we see lots of firms giving their products and services away for free. Many digital markets seem to have much higher levels of concentration than we're used to in other parts of the economy, with many more instances of monopoly or pseudo-monopoly. We see interesting new types of contractual forms arranging between firms that we haven't really seen much of in other parts of the economy. And so this gives lots of interesting questions to try to use economics to address. And so what we're going to do in this course is firstly introduce some of the key fundamental economic ideas and forces that we can use to make sense of some of those puzzles that we've identified and really help us to understand what's going on in these markets and what drives the outcomes that we observe there. And then we're also going to use those tools to think in a fairly systematic and rigorous way about interesting implications, both for business strategy and also for public policy, and how we can use economics as a tool to make sure that those things are done well. The course spans over 5 days, 5 afternoons, and has correspondingly 5 topics. The first lecture will focus on the topic of network effects, which are perhaps the most fundamental of all forces that are utterly pervasive in the digital economy. We'll talk about what they are, what role they play in shaping the outcomes we see in digital markets, and also what strategic approaches firms take to take advantage of these effects. Then we'll talk about platform strategy. Many digital markets are organized around some sort of platform, whether it be a trading platform like eBay, or an advertising focused platform like Facebook or Google, or a software platform like Windows or Android. And we'll look at some of the key strategic decisions that get made in these markets. When do firms want to set up a platform? How should platforms be priced? How should they be designed? The third day will focus on a particular type of platform, namely search engines, and we'll look at some of the interesting economics in search engine markets. So that includes the mechanisms that are used to price ads on search engines. They use a type of auction, and we'll look at how those auctions are designed and how they work. And then we'll look at some of the strategic incentives of the search engines themselves in terms of how they design their algorithms and present results to users, and some of the incentives they may have to distort users' search processes. The fourth day turns a little bit more to policy issues, and will focus on competition policy in particular. So as I mentioned already, many of these digital markets seem to be highly concentrated, many with a monopoly or a pseudo-monopoly. And so what we'll do here is talk about what are some of the policy challenges that appear to be specific to digital markets, and what are some of the new policy approaches that people are thinking about and taking to deal with those issues. And then the last lecture will focus on the economics of data and privacy. Many of these digital markets really depend on the use of data to train algorithms to make product recommendations. And so we will talk about how firms use data, what effect that might have on competition in markets, and also the question of whether markets do a good job of allocating and using data, or whether there are likely to be market failures that a policymaker might want to address. So I think it's a super exciting topic. I hope it will be an equally exciting week, and that you'll consider joining Alexei and I. Alexei couldn't be with us today, but you can see him here on the slide. So with that, thanks, and back over to you, Benny.
Thank you very much, Greg. And it was very nice to see Alexei as well on the last slide. Now, the next one is going to be on production functions, estimations, and markup. So Steve will be presenting.
My name's Steve Bond. I'm going to be teaching a course on covering the estimation of production functions and price cost markups using data on firms or business establishments or plants. So there are going to be two somewhat related sections to the course. And the first topic is going to be the estimation of firm level production functions, and the techniques that we're going to cover here are used in lots of areas of modern applied micro, IO, trade, and research on productivity more generally. If you're not interested in productivity, what are you doing as an economist? Because I just refer you to Paul Krugman's view of the world that in the long run, productivity is pretty important for living standards and so on. And so we're going to be looking at some of the econometric methods that are used in the applied work studying productivity differences between firms, between countries, and a little bit on changes over time. And the second topic is going to be measuring market power, or more specifically, markups of output prices over marginal cost, which is a central measure of firms' market power in product markets. And among other things, we're going to be asking whether we actually have convincing empirical evidence that markups have risen over the last 2 or 3 decades, as has been claimed, but the claim is somewhat controversial. The link between these two areas is an approach to measuring markups developed by Jan de Locker and co-authors over the last decade or so, which is often now referred to as the production approach to measuring markups, and requires us to be able to estimate an output elasticity, so a parameter or a feature of a production function as part of the tool that those guys are using to try and estimate or measure price cost markups. Okay, so in slightly more detail on the estimation of production functions, we're going to cover why this is a difficult empirical problem. The basic reason being productivity is the error term, or a big component of the error term in an empirical production function relating some measure of output to some measures of inputs. And firms are choosing inputs knowing a lot more about their productivity than we're able to observe in any normal data set. And that generates a natural source of simultaneity or an omitted variable bias concern for using standard least squares type estimators. And so the literature has been very active in trying to come up with alternatives. We're going to focus on methods that have been developed in the last 2 or 3 decades. One approach uses ideas taken from the panel data literature, which I've worked on particularly with Richard Blundell. Another approach combines that with kind of cunning ideas to exploit the fact that firms are choosing inputs to try and learn something about productivity from particular input choices. And that leads to an approach known as the control function approach, developed by Ollie and Pakes and others. And then the kind of state of the art in this literature, in my view, is a paper that came out in the JPE in 2020, which is using also kind of combining information from the production function with information from input demand equations and putting the whole thing together to come up with what I think is the kind of state of the art approach to estimating production functions. Turning to price cost markups, we'll very briefly review kind of what you can do if you just use information directly available in company accounts. We'll then be looking in detail at the de Locker style production approach, which uses the ratio and output elasticity for a certain type of input to the share of expenditure on that input in the firm's total revenue. And I'm going to argue that the big challenge in applying this method is the problem of estimating output elasticity elasticities when firms have market power, and we typically observe revenue. We don't have kind of real measures of output or quantity measures of output to work with. And these problems get even worse if we want to allow for unobserved heterogeneity, variation between firms in market power or markups. And we'll conclude by looking at what I think we might be able to do to learn something about markups from commonly available data sources like company accounts. I'm pretty sure that we can put upper and lower bounds on an average measure of markups in a sample of firms. And this is really work in progress, so I may have changed my mind by September, but I think we may be able to go beyond that and approximate the distribution of firm level markups quite accurately, although not exactly.
Thank you very much, Steve. Yeah, that's great. I think I should set your lectures as well. Okay, so next one is machine learning, which will be taught by Max Casey. Unfortunately, Max couldn't be here today, so but he was kind enough to record a video of his presentation, so we'll be sharing it with you now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Max Casey, and I'm a professor at the Department of Economics at Oxford. And I will again this year be teaching the summer school course on foundations of machine learning. And so if you're interested in taking this course, I highly recommend going to my website, where you will find all the course materials for my lectures, and in particular the course materials for last year's summer school. For 2024, and I expect this year to be doing something fairly similar to last year with some updates. And so on this website, you're going to find all my lecture slides, as well as some coding exercises that will be done during the summer school practice sessions. And you're going to find a whole bunch of resources, of books and coding resources and so on related to the course content. And finally, you're also going to find the syllabus, which you see open here on the right-hand side, which gives you an overview of what this course is about. And so the general idea of this crash course, which takes place over 5 days next September, is to give you a quick but solid overview of the theoretical foundations of machine learning. And to do so, I think has a number of benefits for economists. One, it should allow you to become critical consumers of machine learning research, but it should also allow you to develop your own research agenda, where you import ideas from machine learning into the economics methodology toolkit. And finally, it should allow you to talk to the machine learning literature from the perspective of economics. And so in terms of the specific content, we are going to start out by talking about how to implement supervised learning methods in Python programming language, which has some very good standard libraries for doing that. And we're going to take it as a starting point to then think about what makes a good supervised learning procedure, where supervised learning is essentially the problem of learning predictive functions to make good predictions or classifications out of sample. We're going to then turn into a more classic statistical framework, which allows us to understand what's going on a deeper level, which discusses these questions in a stylized framework, just like overfitting and underfitting and tuning, bias variance trade-offs, which kind of are at the heart of a lot of supervised learning. On the third day, we are going to talk about deep neural networks and transformers, which of course in the last few years have had a lot of spectacular successes, starting with image recognition and more recently in large language models and generative AI. On day 4, we are going to change gear, and we're going to talk about online learning and active learning, which are fields that I'm especially interested in, which are in particular useful when you want to think about experimental design, when experiments take place over time. And the idea is that over time, you can change what you do in the experiment, right? So rather than just fitting a model to the data, you're using the data to then make decisions, like deciding who gets treated in what way, for instance. And when you're doing that, you're facing trade-offs between exploration and exploitation. And so that's on day 4. And the last day will be dedicated to a number of debates in the ethics and regulation and politics of AI. which I also recently wrote a book about. And we're going to talk probably about fairness and discrimination and about data privacy and data ownership. And so overall, this should give you like an introduction to some of the key theoretical branches of AI and kind of ongoing debates in those. And so I hope to see many of you next fall in the summer school in September. Thank you.
Okay, so we heard from Max. Thank you, Max. And the next course is solution methods for macroeconomic models. And Peter will be teaching and now be presenting the course description. Peter, over to you.
Thanks, Banu. Hi, everyone. Let me introduce to you the course that I'll be teaching. I'm going to apologize if you have any background noise or some disruptions. I'm currently traveling, but I'm happy I could be here today and tell you a little bit about my course. So I'm going to start with telling you why I think you might be interested in it, and then whether or not I convince you about the why, I'll still tell you what we're going to be covering in September. So as any other hardcore scientists, also macroeconomists, would love to do experiments to figure out how the world works. But for us, it's a little bit harder because we can't really put the whole economy into a laboratory. So what macroeconomists do instead is they build little toy economies in computers. And these are the macro models in which we can then ask the fun questions of why and what if. Now, the issue is that if we make the consumers and firms in those models relatively smart, and I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second, and we kind of insist on prices being internally consistent within those models, and these models are a bit difficult to handle. So kind of technically what we're dealing with is forward-looking decision-making and general equilibrium price setting. So in these conditions, we kind of have to revert to computational methods usually. So in this course, this is exactly what we'll be covering, trying to understand the methods behind solving macro models. Now, in terms of what we'll do exactly, is we're going to start with some basic linearization techniques, both in terms of theory, but also, as Banu explained, in practice. So for those of you who haven't heard about it, Dynair is a very user-friendly software that allows you to do especially linearized solutions, but also lots of other nonlinear solutions in a relatively easy fashion. So that's something that I will definitely introduce to you. But then if you think that the world isn't entirely linear, then of course you'd also want to know a little bit about how you could account for these nonlinearities that are inherent in a lot of these models. So we're going to cover also a few different ways how you could solve these models in global nonlinear ways. So we'll cover projection methods and value function iteration. And then towards the end of the week, we're going to move on to yet another kind of level of complexity. And that will be introducing or discussing ways how to solve models with heterogeneity. So when either consumers or firms or both, if you're very ambitious, how you might want to solve models that have this type of heterogeneity. And we're going to touch upon the distinctions between trying to handle those types of complex models either with or without business cycles, but that's really going to be kind of the cherry on the cake towards the end of the sessions. Now, as Banu explained, this is not just going to be a set of slides. You're also going to walk away with a set of codes, which you would then be able to kind of extend and tweak towards the type of models that you might be working with. So I think this course would give you introduction not only into understanding, but also kind of set you up to immediately start using these models for your own research. So thanks a lot, Banu.
Thank you, Peter. So next one is Alex's course on behavioral macroeconomics. So Alex is now in Frankfurt giving a seminar. So obviously he couldn't make it. I'll try to go over the course myself, but as I said before, I'm a trade economist, so there's no way I can do justice to Alex's material, but I'll give it a go. So behavioral macro, so it's been quite popular in our summer school program. So this is also a newly growing and quite active area of research. So from an empirical point of view, so I know that many leading academics are now doing like large scale surveys to understand people's beliefs and expectations about like certain policies and macroeconomic outlook. So what this course does is to understand how heterogeneous beliefs and expectations matter for our macro models. So starting from a full information setup, what happens when we ignore heterogeneous beliefs and expectations, or how these expectations are formed among agents, and how introducing these would probably produce or generate some interesting outcomes in our macro models. So the topics will be so the topics will include empirical evidence on expectations. So that was my starting point. How to construct data consistent models of expectation formation and macroeconomic impacts of expectation models, the data economy's rise and its macroeconomic implications. So this data issue, big data is appearing in multiple courses, as you can see. So there's a lot of overlap and complementarity across different courses that we'll be offering. So you also see, the scale of complexity in terms of math and theory. But if you have any particular questions about behavioral macro part, please send your emails directly to us, that we'll be sharing at the end of the webinar, so we can direct your questions to Alex and get back to you as soon as possible. Sorry, this is, I know this is not ideal, a trade economist talking about behavioral macro, but yeah, please send us your questions on this particular course, so we can answer them in more detail. Okay, so next in the line is international finance, which will be taught by Andrea Ferrero, and Andrea will be presenting the course description now.
Okay, thank you very much, Banu. Hi, everyone. Great to have you here for this webinar. My name is Andrea Ferrero, and together with my colleague Sergio De Ferra, I will be teaching the International Finance course for our summer school. Like Banu said at the beginning, like also many of the other courses in the summer school, international finance is really a topical course for the summer school. So what we will do is to cover some of the most debated topics that are currently discussed in the field. In particular, my part, which is the first, will cover a discussion of how asset prices and capital flows can move across countries, and how financial shocks propagate internationally. And within this discussion, we will also talk about the toolkit that countries that are particularly exposed to this type of shocks, this type of movements, can adopt in order to mitigate the more negative consequences and more generally manage the cycle. Then Sergio will step in and talk about business cycles in advanced and emerging economies, so taking a comparative approach in that sense, and focusing in particular on two key aspects that affect smaller emerging economies, that are sovereign default risk and how inequality within these countries affect capital flows. Our course takes place in the afternoon, so obviously you can combine it with any of the morning courses. In the past, students who took international finance often combine it with monetary economics because of their interest in macro, but many also took other courses, either one of the empirical applied micro course or other options. So you have, because you have a wide array of options, you can really tailor to your interests. Let me just spend a couple of minutes talking about my part first and then Sergio's part. So what we're starting from is this very broad question that is motivated by the empirical evidence of how capital flows and asset prices can move, and the evidence suggests that the movement is really strong across countries. Here you have a picture of what portrays an international financial network, so how countries are really related to each other in terms of capital flow. So this is really going to be the starting point. There's an exciting literature, I believe, that developed in particular over the last 10 years or so. And so it kind of relates to the question then of how shocks that affect some of the bigger countries also propagate across the world. So this obviously is related to a very old debate in international finance, which is about the policy tools to deal with external shocks. And so the classical benchmark is this idea developed by Mandel about the so-called impossible trinity. There is the trade-offs in having stable exchange rate, free financial flows, and independent monetary policy. This benchmark has been challenged by this new literature, and so we will study the extent to which this is true, and what kind of tools the policymakers can employ in order to manage these challenges. And so here on the right, I list some of these tools that have been discussed in recent years. So this will be my part, and then Sergio will step in and talk about emerging economies more particular, and business cycles in those countries. So taking a look at how boom and bust compare in emerging markets versus advanced economy, defining in particular what is a sudden stop, which is a phenomenon that particularly affects these countries, how capital flows interact with business cycle frequencies, and when these are driven by governments that perhaps borrow too much and then have face the risk of defaulting on their debt. And then the other part of Sergio's chunk of the course is going to be about inequality. This is also a very recent literature, very exciting, that it's really the frontier of the debate. So a lot of the literature is focused on inequality in closed economy. This part of the course will take it to the open economy dimension, so asking whether countries that are unequal, particularly unequal, suffer more or less from recessions. So who suffers more, who suffers less? I mean, obviously, these are questions that require a much more sophisticated type of model. And so that's what Sergio is going to develop, and then ask whether this type of inequality can also affect capital flow. So really the interaction between the two, with particular examples like the US and UK, where inequality is pretty high, and how that affects their external imbalances. So this is an overview of the course, and I hope that many of you will be interested, and please feel free to ask questions after all the presentation in case I can be of any help. And I really hope to see many of you in September in Oxford. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And we're finishing with monetary economics, and Michael will be sharing slides and give a description of the course. Over to you, Michael.
Great, thank you very much. I have been teaching monetary economics together with my colleague Federica Rame for a number of years now. You have the dates, but we are a morning session. So as Andrea said, the tradition was you would do monetary and then international finance. But of course, there are other options that people now explore as the summer school has gotten bigger. I probably would have spent more time trying to tell you why monetary policy is important a couple of years ago. But given that we have just come through a period where in most parts of the world, inflation, even in advanced countries that have enjoyed low inflation for around 30 years, inflation got to pretty big numbers. So in the UK, we got above 11% recently. Monetary policy is the sort of crucial tool in modern economies to get inflation under control. It's generally the most used, the most activist demand management tool. And, even in the last 15 years plus since the financial crisis, between things like quantitative easing, how you tighten rates, do you sell these bonds that they bought? We've had yesterday the inauguration of President Trump, who in his last time in office has stated that he actually does not think that monetary policy should be focused on fighting inflation and should be under the control of the president. In the UK, we've had questions about whether it should be growth focused. And if these are questions that are of interest to you, you may be in a central bank, you may be just generally interested in these aspects of finance, etc. This course is about a large body of academic literature that has been asking these questions, understanding these, and has really shaped the design of these institutions. So between Federica and I, we will introduce you to this literature and teach you, as Banu was saying at the very start, some tools, both theoretical and what you might think of as more applied tools. I won't go through everything in detail also because we update it. But in general, when we think about empirical analyses, this is the material that mostly I will teach. You could think about this as combinations of modern data science techniques to understand, say, central bank communication, and sort of welding them together with the more traditional approaches to macroeconometrics, thinking about shocks and monetary policy, and understanding why actually a simple question like what is the effect of the interest rate on inflation and the economy is actually not such a simple question to answer. On the theory side, which Federica will mostly teach, the sort of starting point is the new Keynesian model, but there are many variants of that, including, touching on what Andrea just did when thinking about issues of distributions and inequality. You can think about these versions where they have multiple agents or heterogeneous agents, the so-called Hank literature. So that's the kind of empirical and theoretical analyses. And then the final thing that we do is we, as other courses, run practical sessions. We have teaching assistants who will teach you how to code and literally get these tools up and running on your own computer for both the empirics and the theoretical analysis. That's it. I will stop there. There's no point going into all the questions because you'd be better off just signing up for the course and seeing you in September, and you can find out everything then.
Yeah, great. Finishing with this message. Okay, so we're done with the course descriptions, and we thought maybe you would also want to hear from one of the participants from earlier years. So we invited Guillermo Giron. He was supposed to be here, but he just had a baby, so it's a good excuse to miss the webinar. But he was kind enough to record a video of his thoughts and experience about the summer course and share it with you. Now we will be playing it for you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Guilherme Giron. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. I have a degree in economics from University of São Paulo. And this year I'll conclude my master's in economics and finance. Besides that, I've been working as a financial advisor for the past 10 years. So I was in the summer school last September, and I was looking for enriching academics experiences when I found out about Oxford Summer School. I chose behavioral macroeconomics in the morning and international finance in the afternoon, both of them not only for academic reasons, but also professionally due to my job. And I think that was a great combination of time and resources, the possibility of doing 2 courses in 1 week. I also like to comment that I stayed in the dorms that you can see in the pictures. They are very close to Manor Road building, and in addition to this convenience, it was another opportunity to interact with friends. We had a big group. I think we were like 45 people for more than 20 countries. So you have a lot of diverse backgrounds and researches, ideas, and you had a lot to talk. And for me, I came from a big city, and being in Oxford was like a dream. I've been to UK a few times, but never been in Oxford, and the city is beautiful. So in the evening after classes, you have places to visit. You take a lot of pictures, and I'm sure you enjoy it.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Nemo. So we're done with presentations. Maybe it's a good time to end the webinar. Thank you once again, all of you who have attended and shown interest. So we're hoping to see many of you in Oxford in September. Once again, if you have any other questions, anything that you want to ask about the summer schools, please send us an email so you will get an answer very quickly. And have a nice day, and I hope to see you. Bye-bye.